Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Travel Creator Podcast. I have for you a fantastic interview with the one and only Sofia, who is a Danish travel content creator who is going to tell us all about her quick Instagram growth and, more importantly, how the heck we can kind of move away from the vanity metrics and into so much more in our content.
I'm Sofia, born and raised in Copenhagen, and I do content creation, and my page is all about travel, solo travel primarily, budget travel, traveling as a young person, trying to find yourself as well in this very big world, and currently mostly like Europe travel, as I myself have never been outside of Europe, so that's all I can really talk about, but Europe is also a nice place. So far, it's all good.
That's amazing. I remember when, man, it must be like a few months ago now, when your page kind of you just kept growing. And it was so quick in terms of what people think about growing. How did that feel? Was that weird? Yeah, how did that feel? Let's start there.
Weird. Very weird. More in the sense that I had no goals whatsoever for the page. I didn't start it really for any other reason than I had just spent 5 weeks in Italy last year, and I had spammed my personal Instagram. And then I was like, I might as well just start a new account where it's only that. And then it took off really quickly. I even have an old story in one of my highlights where I freaked out that I got 5,000 views on, I think maybe my third or fourth video. And suddenly things just started growing. It was really quick. And back to your question, how it feels or it felt at that point, just really weird. But I just thought it was really cool. And I got to chat with a lot of people. I think you were one of the first people as well that I got in contact with. Yeah. And it's not even been a year. Can you imagine?
That's crazy.
It's not even been a year. That's so
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's also like, yeah, you're like, whoa, wait a second. I kept posting this stuff. It seems to have been well received. People seem to like it. Let's just keep going and see what happens. And now here you are, and I cannot believe you haven't even done a year. And it's the best because you started doing it because you wanted to. I always say that people never set out to become travel creators. It's because they started traveling and they started sharing about it, and then it turned into this thing, which I think is the best because then you know you're truly doing something that you love. I also take screenshots of like every like little things that happen. We're like, oh, someone said this nice thing, or like, oh, look, this numbers thing happened. Let's take a screenshot of it, and I like put it away in a folder because I know someday I'll look back and be like, oh my goodness, we were celebrating this little thing. How fun.
I did that as well, or I still do. Every time I reached a new round number, I'd be like, oh my God, 100 new followers or something. And now it's the funniest thing to look back on. And I also think what I've noticed the most with the growth as well is how quickly it becomes serious. Like in the beginning, you're just doing it for fun. And then suddenly when you reach X amount of followers or X amount of reach, suddenly it becomes serious. Then you have to take it seriously. I think
when do you feel like that happened for you? A certain number?
Like the golden number, you might be able to relate to this, but like the golden number you like most of us reach for is 10,000 followers. It's like this really big thing. 10,000, that's like huge. For me, I just woke up one morning and was like, holy shit, I just reached 10,000. But it was actually then. It was first like around 12, 13 something thousand followers that I was like, oh shit, it is getting serious.
Yeah. Holy cow. Okay, so I found Sofia just through the Instagram grapevine. And what really drew me to her content, one, is that I'm obsessed with Denmark. But besides the point, if you're not obsessed with Denmark like I am, I was also drawn just to the content that she shares is so jam-packed with information. And I know that's what a lot of travel creators do, but she presents it in a way that feels so just like a friend telling you this information. And she also becomes so real in what she's sharing. Again, there's a lot of creators who do this, but it just feels a little bit different. And we have to remember that people follow us because of us. And a lot of people can be raw and real in their content, but like I like following Sofia because she is Sofia and I genuinely like her. And that is something we have to keep in mind when we think about why people follow us. They follow us because they want to pay attention to what you are doing and they find you interesting. I think that has also helped her get so big so quickly is just being herself. And like I've mentioned many times on this podcast, the things I'm telling you about like how to grow on this show are pretty obvious perhaps, but maybe you just need somebody to hear it or somebody to say it to you. I think if I woke up and suddenly went viral, I would probably panic because then there feels like there's so much pressure to, okay, I did something that clearly this internet is responding to. Do I need to like continuously do it again? I just feel like there would be so much pressure to continue to put out the same level of content every single time. But we have to remember, and we'll get into that in this conversation with Sofia, we're not just creating content to go viral. Because if you go viral, sure, you're going to get more followers and more attention, fine. But the people who are coming to your page, are they really the kind of people in your target audience that you want there? Are they really the people who are going to buy from you or sign up to your email address? You might just have a new audience now, a large one, but it might not be the people who are really your ideal audience. Okay, so like you woke up, now you have so many thousands of followers, literally. And what did you feel like, okay, this needs to be on my to-do list, or what do I need to do now to continue this? What were you thinking or trying to put into action?
Oh, lots of research, I think, on what do I do with this platform. One thing is monetizing it, but because what I mean about it all getting serious is that people also start expecting something more from you. You have to overdo yourself each time because you want your next video to be better than the previous one and to do better as well. And yeah, I never set out to travel somewhere because I would get a good video out of it. But obviously, that begins to become this idea that your quality should be better just because you have more followers or something like that.
Oh,
and
that's
then
interesting.
I started looking into, cameras or settings or how to improve in some way. And one of the things that I still feel very humbled by is that you just mentioned it, but you have so many thousands of followers. Like when you start out and you have 100, yes, 17,000 sounds like a lot. And then the more you get, you're like, oh, it's not even that much. Like I can get to 50,000. I can get to 100,000. You take it for granted in so many ways. You're like, oh, well, I can always be bigger. And there's these accounts out there that have, one thing is millions of followers, but 100,000, 50, I still think those are huge numbers. But also when I look at an account today that has 50 plus thousand followers, I'm not even sure I want to follow them or like actually take their advice. I know it sounds weird, but to me, I'm like, yes, obviously their videos are great or something like that. But I'm like, can I really trust you? Because now when you're inside this world of social media and living off of social media in that sense, you know that a lot of it is made for social media. This is planned. There's this content plan. Oh, this shot is really good because then we can make this angle or whatever. Or you quickly see where do people insert ads. Oh, this is sponsored, and you can see it so quickly. So when I come across those pages, like I can still enjoy their videos, and if there's a beautiful place that they've been, like I can write it down and be like, oh, I want to see that place as well. But I don't fully trust their page.
That's super interesting.
So it actually scares me a bit, like followers. It scares me because you want to grow and and especially when it comes to brand deals, whatever, they also care about that. You want to grow and you want to see that your hard work pays off in some way. But at the same time, I'm scared of it. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't want it to be fake. I don't want it to be too much. I don't want it to be because of followers or whatever. But
I guess you're so right now, because when I think of some influencers I follow who have so many followers, and it's can be frustrating from a I'm consuming the content standpoint. From their standpoint, it's like this is their job and this is what they're doing. They're just here to pay for their bills, and that's we can't fault them for that. It's just not not as entertaining sometimes as we wish it was. And it's like they've just gotten so good at creating ads or like UGC content that it's hard to you're like, "Oh, am I being entertained or am I being sold to?" And then you have weird feelings about it. There comes a reality check, I'm sure, when you hit a certain number of, "Okay, this can be used as a job, but also I need to check my I have the power to reach and influence so many people. Let me figure out how I want to do that in the best way to use my own voice." I'm sure that gets so hard and tricky because then sometimes when influencers become so big, the public expects them to have opinions on all of these issues, whether they have absolutely nothing related to travel or not. And that's never going to be, that's always going to be a gray area. That's always going to be a sticky situation. And you'll never please anybody or everybody.
Never,
I mean, you'll never make everyone happy. But that is really interesting. And I think something that we don't talk about when we talk about growing, because it's not the fun part of it. It's the real reality check of like, why are you doing this? Okay, cool. Maybe. And some people set out with the goal of, I'm going to get to 100,000 followers. That's my goal for the next whatever. But then they don't think about like, what should I do after that? Okay, this happens. Now what? Now who am I? And who are these people who are actually following me? Because I'm sure as you've even learned, and you haven't done it for a year, of like, you change so much about the way that you talk about yourself online, probably from the first when you started to now. 100%. That can get people in some hot water. Wow, I'm so glad we talked about that. That was really incredible. Okay, I got this question that was, do you consider the number of followers before you follow someone? So like, does followers equal trust? And I think that's really interesting question. I think a lot of people do just credit the number of followers to, okay, they might be doing something right. Look, everybody else is following them, so they must be sharing something cool, interesting, entertaining, whatever. However, this also makes me think of branding, because you can have a large following, but if you are sharing kind of some weird off-the-wall things, like every single thing you're sharing is different and it's not sort of all tying back to one theme, that can be a little confusing for your audience, and that can help them actually not trust you.
And especially when it comes to or at least what I've noticed a lot, that I personally don't like these like really aesthetic travel videos where you see, oh, it's just one beautiful shot after another beautiful shot, and these girls running with their dresses, and we've all seen them, and it looks amazing. It looks so beautiful, and you instantly want to visit that place. Obviously, like, why wouldn't you? And something that I've learned after getting into all of this myself that I probably wouldn't have noticed before is that most likely that video is sponsored in some way. It could be a hotel collaboration or a tourism board collaboration or whatever, something where there's this really beautiful video on this country, go visit it. And not that I don't want to, but I always feel like that it's so misleading in so many ways, because yes, countries, pretty much any country is beautiful in some way. There's beautiful nature, beautiful buildings, something beautiful in every single country. But a lot of those videos also, either they have been paid to remove people or something. I don't even know. But
I know what you mean.
That's not what it looks like for real people. If you want to go to that place, like 9 out of 10 times, it won't look like that. So and even if it does, like when you go there, it's cloudy and rainy and you're like, shit. And then when you get those proposals, brands reaching out to you, being like, can you make something like that? I feel the pressure. I'm like, I'm not, because I don't want to. I don't want to make this beautiful video about this beautiful place that is not really true. But at the same time, which brand would want you to create a video of all the ugly places? Like, no one, right? No one wants to pay you to be like fully 100% honest, right? So that's definitely a part of the travel pages on Instagram and working as a travel influencer. Don't like that word, but it's one of the ugly sides and the things that we don't really talk about. And I also think it's important when you consume that kind of content that you have it in mind, not necessarily that people have been paid for it, because as you said, like rightfully so, of course, it's their job and they've done it beautifully. Looks amazing. I want to go there. Like, job well done. But just have in mind that most likely that's not the reality of traveling there unless you have a lot of money to go to all these luxury resorts and stuff like that. And that most likely there's some sort of sponsorship or someone behind the scenes making sure that you get this beautiful video.
Yeah. I think my favorite content to watch are people who are having terrible times in the best and nicest way possible.
Yeah.
But I just love seeing the behind the scenes of, okay, like I want to visit Southeast Asia and I just keep seeing content of people on these 13-hour overnight buses. And I'm like, all right, I would be delusional enough to actually purchase a ticket. Seeing these videos, I'm like, okay, I no, this is not going to be for me. I really don't think I could do it. Is such a reality check. It's so easy to get caught up in all of the brands and all the things that want to come to you when you need to rein in on your goals and figure out, like, why am I even doing this at all? Is it to make a shit ton of money? Great. But also, you can't make a shit ton of money if you're not. It's so hard because it's like, go post whatever you want. Amazing. As long as it's on brand, it's you, whatever. And the other half of it is, but let's also be nice to the people who are on the other side of the screen and not lie. It's so gross. It is gross. It makes me like not, I'm like having a reality check myself of like, what advice am I giving people to do that? Oh my God.
That's the thing, because whenever you have an audience, and it doesn't really matter how many people it is, you have some sort of responsibility to at least just reflect on what is it that you're telling people. No matter if they will ever follow your advice or not, but you're saying something that might resonate with someone. And if it's always not necessarily fake, but if you can't stand behind it yourself, why are you saying it? And if
you wouldn't say it out loud. If you wouldn't say it out loud to somebody,
exactly.
Let's not put it on the
face to face, right?
You need to start start a course of how to be like a decent influencer. There you go. Your next your next project.
Oh girl, I have so many projects. I don't have time for anything else. Maybe. All the projects.
Okay. Going back to some of your rapid growth, and maybe you're tired of even talking about it because I'm sure a million people have asked you about it. And if you are, we don't have to talk about it. Don't want to make it rehash this. Do you feel like now that you have all these months under your belt and now you have more of like a critical understanding of this is what makes a good piece of content, or you just know a good piece of content when you see it versus one that's like this, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing created this and they posted it?
Oh, yeah.
What do you feel like was helpful in your content that you think helped you grow?
Great question. I've tried to think a lot about that myself, because what is it about my page that is so different? And when I really think about it, there's not really much that's different. There's millions of pages on Instagram, and travel pages especially. It's so many. And I love that. I really, really love that. And I love, especially when Instagram, from a consumer point of view, I love when Instagram pushes small accounts. From a creative point of view, I fucking hate it. Sorry, but oh God. When I scroll Instagram, like my main source of inspiration always comes from Instagram when it comes to travel advice, but also where to go. And I get like from all the small pages, people with maybe 500 followers, less than 1,000 or less than 5,000. Yeah, their videos might not be the best. Mine are not always the best either. but
They are.
but they have some good recommendations. They've been some cool ass places.
Mhm.
I want to go there as well. And that's what I love, really, really love. And I think that's what I started to do as well. Not because I went to places that nobody else had been. I went to Italy. Again, that was my first real solo trip. And I was there for 5 weeks. I'd never been away for that long. So I just had Italy content to begin with. That was the only thing I could really post about or Copenhagen, because that's where I'm from. But so I think one thing was relatability in the sense that you don't have to be very well traveled to love travel. I talked with a lot of people about that to begin with. And I was just starting out myself to figure out what kind of traveler am I? What do I like to do when I travel? What advice would I want when I go traveling? Because a lot of it is trial and error. Like in the sense, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. And you have to make a lot of mistakes to figure out, okay, that's not for me, like the 13-hour sleeper bus. So you either have to try it yourself, be like, oh shit, that was that. I hated that. Or you see somebody else have done it and be like, ooh, oh, that doesn't sound like a good experience, right? So there were definitely some sort of relatability. And then I think the number one mistake that a lot of people do if they want one thing is to grow their account, but also help others is value. And I hear so many Instagram coaches be like, oh, you have to give value in your reels. You have to give people value. I hate that word, but it's true in the sense that I hate when I see a video and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then you click on the caption and there's nothing. Or it's just like how would you want to go here? Something like that. I'm like,
Mhm.
I need more. Like, I need more than that. And what people commented on some of my first videos were definitely that they liked that I gave a lot of information. It could be about the area, it could be about how to get there or whatever. And it's giving value and writing a long ass caption are two very different things.
No kidding.
But giving that extra information, helping someone understand about this destination, this specific place, give a little extra because you're talking to someone who hasn't been here before. What do they need to know? What are your experiences? How did you get to this place? How did you like it? Whatever, but something that actually helps them. Because I truly think that was the one and only thing that set me apart to begin with.
Mm.
Because mostly, if you start out, you're just thinking about making a beautiful video or learning editing and maybe even just trying to post consistently or something like that. And I totally get that. And in the beginning, there's a million things to think about, always in your head. And I totally get that. But whenever I scroll on Instagram now and I see those people starting out, that's definitely what I remember the most. That really resonated with me when I started out. Because for me, it was a no brainer. I just did what I wanted to see myself. And then people started pointing it out, being like, oh, I like your guides, or I really like this extra piece of information. I was like, oh, but this is actually, for me, it's a no brainer, but it's also what people like to see. So it's not about your aesthetic video. It's not about you going to a popular, pretty place or a hidden gem or something like that, but figuring out what is it that your content can give someone else. And I guess I was just lucky in the beginning
No.
to have that nailed. But I also think that it all comes down to I've always loved writing. Now I call it content, but essentially it's just writing, right?
Yeah.
So
You have to be a good writer. And
yeah.
the reason I have a couple of reasons why I think your account is different than the other budget traveler accounts. And I think you talked
Okay.
a lot about them. You are showing what it's really like to experience this place. And you're not frolicking in a field necessarily. You're like, this is me at this location and this is what it looks like. And
Yeah.
it's pretty great. And here's what you need to know about it. You're
Mm.
also giving away so much information and you're not gatekeeping it. That's
Mm-mm.
huge. That is huge because then people are like, awesome, I'm going to follow Sofia because I'm planning a trip to Slovenia and she has all of these recommendations about what I should do there and whatever. You're just sharing so much information that
Mm.
it's like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
And I think what's also interesting is there's so many ways you can share about budget travel. You can go through
Mm.
the content pillar of tips of how to go on your backpacking trip, meaning here's how to find the hostel, here's how to do this, here's how to do that. There's so many ways. But what I think a lot of other budget creators miss out on is how to actually experience a place. I think people get a lot caught up in the how to get there. Here's where I go to find the cheap flights. And that is
Mm.
very important. But then it's okay, I showed up. Now what? Now,
Mm.
shoot, I'm in Paris. It's extremely expensive. How do I even find a good place to eat where that is not going to cost me so much money? And another thing I think that you capture is you created content that you love. You weren't
Mm.
creating content because you were like, cool, I studied all these other creators and it looks like they're posting X piece of
Mm.
content on Wednesdays and X
Yeah.
piece of content on Fridays. You're like,
Yeah.
I just freaking love this place and I'm going to
Yeah.
share about it. And I'm going to use my caption or my reel, whatever, like I'm telling a friend about this location. But it makes sense that you love writing because you're telling a story. And I just say it all the time. If people can't tell stories, you're doomed. You are doomed. You're doomed. AI can get you to a certain extent, but you need a human to help you. These are skills you can learn for sure.
Definitely.
But if you are not a good writer or
Writing.
copywriter,
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to you.
It's the same with math, right? From someone who freaking hates math,
I'm so
like,
bad at it.
of course you can learn. Yeah. But if it doesn't come naturally to you, like you're going to hate every freaking second of it and it's going to be really hard. Doesn't mean that you can't do it. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get good at math at some point. It's just going to take a lot more effort.
Yeah.
So if you have that writer gene or it falls more naturally to you, embrace it.
Yes, especially for people starting out, I try and tell them, think about what comes easy to you because some people are like, they're stars in front of the camera. And it's like, cool, let's make content that's has you in front of the camera. Other people are like, I could write a fantastic blog post.
Yeah.
Cool, let's start there. You can't force yourself to to do the hard thing because then you're gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out whether you love what you're creating or not. And creating content that in a way that you hate is going to make it come so much faster and harder and you're not going to want to do it again. And I think that's something that a lot of creators don't like. We forget because we're like, oh, shoot, I could have so much freedom. I could have so much money. I could have this by getting to a certain extent.
Mm.
But you have to like what you're doing. This has to be fun. And it's also hard because people who are already there on the internet, they're like, great, it is fun. Just come join us and put in the work. And it's, oh my God, it is so hard. It is so hard. But
I hate that so much.
I think everybody who is a content creator, we're all kind of insane because we are choosing a career field that has think about it. If you're like
Yeah.
a chemist or like a pharmacist or something, it's very clear what you're doing.
Yeah.
Millions of people have done it before. All you
Yeah.
have to do is follow a formula. Here, we're out in like the Wild West, like literally no idea. We're just trailblazing and trying to figure out like and we're choosing this for fun so that we can spend more time outside or whatever. Okay. What?
Oh, it's so true. It's so
Ugh.
true. When I was in Hungary, in Budapest, met up with a girl who's from Denmark as well, but she lives in Budapest. And I had come across her page on Instagram solely because of her Budapest content. and I was planning on what to do in Budapest. And then I wrote her, especially after I found out that she was Danish. I was like, that's so cool. I love meeting fellow Danes on Instagram. And we ended up meeting up while I was in Budapest. And we talked about this like very specifically. And we were going through so many of the same struggles. And having someone who understands just how much work it actually is, it's so freeing, because for so many people, it seems so easy. And I will admit, before I got into this world at all, I was like, influencers. First of all, I wouldn't call what I do influencing, or like most travel pages, I wouldn't consider to be influencers. Because if you're an influencer, you don't really have a niche. It's like you can talk about pretty much anything because people are following you as a person. Whereas if you're a content creator, you most likely have a specific niche where people don't necessarily follow you as a person, but they follow you because of what you're talking about. So for example, travel, right? But we were discussing it in school and discussing it at home with our grandparents, and like this whole upcoming of influencers. I was like, that must be so easy. And after I've actually learned how much work it is. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a taboo, but to some extent, I don't like to talk about it, like the real struggles behind it, because so many people, they don't take it seriously. And I get it, because if you don't really know anything about it, like how would you, like if someone's a doctor and they're talking to you about their job as a doctor, like you can somewhat relate, even though you're not a doctor yourself, what a doctor is. Like you've been to a doctor, that they have lots of patients and they need to know all of these things and blah, 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 blah. You can relate to that. But this field of work, also because it's still relatively new to a lot of people, they don't necessarily know of it. And then you can't blame them, but you also can't really talk to them about it, because it turns into this huge conversation. And then you have to have that over and over and over. And you don't want to do that. But
yes, it's hard because in some ways it's such a privilege to be able to whip out our phones and be paid.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, so many people who I have researched have turned to content creation in times of financial struggle. And it's so interesting, the comparison, because there's a lot of people who start it on the side for fun.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who start it out of necessity. Yeah. And it's such a murky thing that nobody knows how to talk about. And it does seem so cushy and easy because all you're doing is sitting on the internet all day long. Yeah. And like people say to me all the time, they're like, or like my family joke with me. They're like, oh, what are you doing, working today? And I'm like, actually, yes, I am. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just am blessed to be able to do it in a beautiful place. Sorry, I chose this path. But it is, there's big, weird feelings around it, both I think from people on the inside and people from the outside. And it's something you'll never understand until you're like learning more about content. And then it's, oh my God, now we're in too deep. My brain is like swirling with things we just have to learn more. Have to keep going.
I think that's the biggest issue when you're just starting out, is that there is so much information and misinformation as well. And as we all know and love the Instagram algorithm and whatever, like no one freaking knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows, no. And there's a lot of great advice out there. There's also a lot of trash advice out there. And when you're just starting out, oh my God, it's horrible. There is no one set direction to go. And in the beginning, you're just confused. And things still get confusing right now. I'm definitely in a weird, muddy phase where the algorithm changed not that long ago. We all know that. Instagram made it very clear that they're pushing smaller accounts, which, as I said earlier, as a consumer, I love that. As a creator, I really hate it. And when you see your own numbers start to fall, and you also lose a little bit of creativity and motivation, because again, I do this for a living now, and seeing it not going as well as you'd like it to, or as people expect it to, it becomes a little bit disheartening. And then you tend to be like, oh, uh, do I have to pay for some course that some Instagram guru tells you to buy because they have all the golden information on how to get millions of views? And I understand that you get to a point sometimes where I'm going to buy like this course and this course because Googling doesn't help that much. And sometimes you feel like you've hit the right spot because one or two reels went really well. And then it suddenly changes and you get desperate in it. And it doesn't even matter how big of your following is. But one thing is starting out and trying to figure out how this whole thing works, but just also understanding that it's a constant learning curve. And you go through ups and downs on Instagram, and sometimes you want to throw your phone away. And other times it's amazing. And oh God,
when it's good, it's good. And when it's bad, it's really bad.
It's really bad. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. This industry of content creation, I don't need to tell you, is new. And it hasn't been around long enough for us to figure out exactly how to do the damn thing. And I want to remind you that nobody knows what they're doing. We're just really good at posing like we do. And that's kind of the beauty of this. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword because it means you can go out and do the dang content creation thing as well. But we have to keep in mind that it's going to take some testing here. There are so many ups and downs of content creation, as you know, from figuring out how to not take anything personally to figuring out what people actually want to see from you. It's a lot, but in my newsletter that I send weekly on Tuesdays, I highlight a creator who is doing something unique in their content, and I show you how you can apply that to your content as well. And by the way, it's freaking cheaper than buying an Instagram guru course. So you can find a link to join the Content Compass for free in the show notes. What other things would you say to somebody who, like, put yourself back in your own shoes a couple of months ago before you woke up one day and took the internet by storm? What would you say to those people who are like just trying to do what you were doing? You just gave a great piece of advice, but if there's anything else you're like, ooh, I really just want to let people know this thing.
Do it and put in the work and let's say immerse yourself in it and understand it. One thing is Instagram, but also the people that you are following, that are following you. What is it all about?
It's about your community, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I know it might not help that much, but just do it. Do something. Because often we get stuck in our own heads like a lot. And if you're like me and normally don't really post, not really active on social media, I love scrolling and following everybody else's life. But on my personal social media, I rarely ever post. So if you're that kind of person like me, like just posting your first reel already there, you're good to go, right? But then also getting consistent with it and figuring out what part of it is it that you love. Is it connecting with people? Is it making a difference with your advice? What can you bring to the table? Don't try to tell yourselves that you're one of a kind, unique, and all the places you've been to are so much different and so much more special. No, especially if you're in the travel niche, nothing you really do is that special because most likely somebody else has been there and they've filmed it and they've made
exactly everything that's already. Like I said this in a episode a while back. Our bucket lists are all the same. No new like Grand Canyon is popping up. Everything that's been said has been said before. We just need to
don't try to invent something new, but roll with it and just do it and figure out what part of it is it that you really love and that you can resonate with and that where you can be a part of it. Like there's things that I would never post about that maybe you would really like to post about. And that's where it becomes beautiful. And that's where we can all go to one place and get completely different experiences from it. And that's the beauty of it, right? So figure out like what is it that you want from it and put in the work. It takes so much time. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of fails, and be comfortable with the struggle. Be comfortable putting yourself out there. It might be a little bit awkward and cringy, but you just got to do it. And the same with pitching. Yeah, you'll get rejected 100 million times, and then maybe one will stick. And then you got to celebrate that win, and then put your head down and pitch 100 more.
Exactly.
And one day you might be able to live off of it. Maybe you will never be able to live off of it. I think you just have to. That's at least what I do. I lean into it and I say, I'm going to give this a shot now, see where it takes me, and then just work for it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that I'm going to make millions? Hopefully, but most likely not, right?
No, you will.
Yeah, we will. We'll become billionaires from this.
Hey, you could be the first ever travel creator to make $1 billion.
Yeah, definitely.
Put that on your to-do list.
I'm manifesting it. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But definitely I'm not big on goals. I don't write down goals, especially not like number-wise, stuff like that. But right now, I get so much satisfaction out of it. And it helps my travels a lot to do all of this research.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've always said is I am just that organizing freak that I can't go somewhere and not have a plan. Like I just can't.
Man, I need you.
Yeah. And I also can't go somewhere and not see the things that you have to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I will forever and always research the shit out of a place. And I'm like, I can either just keep all of that to myself or I can share it.
Exactly. My last question for you. What are your next big things you're working on, if you want to share them? Or do you feel like, okay, you're kind of at a place where you can just continue to ride this wave, see where this goes, lean in because you love it already? What do you feel like is on your mind of like, oh, I really want to accomplish this thing. I really want to finish this guide I'm working on, or this creating this thing would be really cool. Is there anything that you're like dreaming of doing that you know would be awesome, but you're working on?
Definitely my blog. Again, at heart, I'm a writer. Not professional or anything like that, but as much as I love photographs and videos and whatnot, that's not really the part of it that I like. But the writing part is definitely what draws me to creating content. So for me, a dream is to have a full, real blog. I have a website. Technically, I have a blog, but it is time consuming. It is hard work. And both managing social media and a blog, it's a lot of work. It's really a lot of work.
Full-time job.
It is more than a full-time job. I'm still working on that. And also because I want it to be good. If I'm putting myself out there, I want to like it. And I read a lot of blog posts myself. So I know what I expect of a blog. And I don't expect something that I can quickly put together. It takes a lot of effort to write a good blog post, and in general, have a good blog. That's definitely a work in progress.
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait. I'll be waiting.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Where do you want people to find you? I'm assuming your Instagram. Do you want them to go look at your blog?
No, not right now. Not right now. Later, but no, I'm only on Instagram at the moment. And that's where they'll find me. Yeah.
You can find Sofia on Instagram at world.of.sofiab. It's SOFIAB. Highly recommend. She is just your average solo budget travel girl. Saying that from her bio, she is not just average. Maybe, Sofia, you should update that. But she gives us honest travel tips, and I highly recommend going to subscribe to her, as well as checking out her free travel guides in her Stan store. Thank you, Sofia, for joining us on this episode. I'm so excited that you were able to come on and drop all this knowledge. I hope to have you back on the pod soon. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Travel Creator. Happy creating, and I'll see you next week.